Hello and welcome to The Strange Caravan and You. This is part of an ongoing series of deep dives into various aspects of the board game Kingdom Death Monster. My name is Fen, and today we are looking at the settlement side of the Nemesis expansion for the Lion Knight. The Lion Knight is a Node 2 monster themed around the concept of a visitor from the Holy Lands along with a retinue that looking to put some plays on to help the Lion Knight connect further with its obsession with humanity and what makes for emotion and heroism and a lot of other different themes. So you'll find a lot of travelling, caravan, theatric kind of elements to this expansion. It's also an interesting insight into the world of the Holy Lands. This is the second of 3 Lion Knights. The first one is banished to a place for being completely unhinged. The second one kind of isn't doing its job. It's wandering around, although it is wandering around the plane of stone faces with 3 very powerful individuals who also help run the caravan. These are Sam, Ash and Rand. We'll talk about those when we get to the caravan section itself. They're present on the Lion Knight's base, and debatably they're more important than the Lion Knight. Within the Holy Lands, female characters, women, are generally considered more important and have more status than men. Men tend to be warriors and drones, so that kind of ties into the whole thing. But ultimately, we're still not fully clear on what the Holy Lands is and why they borrow so much lion iconography. I mean, we'll see here that the second Lion Knight, the lead character of this expansion, dresses up as a lion. It's a face mask, it's a set of gauntlets. Underneath, given what we know about the first Lion Knight, it's likely the second Lion Knight looks kind of like a half-boiled human, the same way that the Manhunter does and the first Lion Knight does. So a lot of costuming, but this is fairly common. There's a lot of lion theming from the Golden Entities people, and it sort of suggests that they're trying to emulate the Silver City's previous civilization, or competing with it, or perhaps even taking it over. We're not sure. Hopefully we'll find more about that in the Silver City expansion. Anyway, the Lion Knight turns up as an uninvited guest, and this will set up places everyone, which will be beginning of your Nemesis Showdown expansion experiences. But before that, the very first thing we'll get is this Stoic statue, which is the Lion Knight itself. And we also have to roll on this table. On a 1 to 3, we lose 2 endeavours, and with drums, a randomly nominated survivor will gain Coprolalia. An interesting thing about this is each player has to nominate 1 survivor. On a 4 to 7, offerings are given to the Lion Knight, and each nominated survivor gets a random disorder. If you have face painting on a 5 to 7, then additionally the nominated survivors will gain some extra insanity, +4. That's nice. And on an 8, 9 or a 10, you get +2 endeavours. The nominated survivors gain +2 understanding, but they're not allowed to endeavour, which isn't a huge deal. That's okay. You can endeavour with other survivors as long as you have them in the settlement. And if you have Symposium innovated, then you will also gain the Nightmare Training innovation at no cost and +3 endeavours. So that's like really good. And generally you want to have Symposium put together early. So the main thing to be aware here is pick survivors who you don't mind gaining random disorders. That's kind of it. Or Coprolalia. So I would avoid putting this on any survivor who is going out on hunts. I wouldn't nominate them because of Coprolalia. But otherwise, I'd pick a bunch of what I call plebs, or peons if you prefer. They're just the blank slate normal survivors. And maybe they can get some extra understanding and start to become useful. Then we have the Stoic statue itself. So this is a really interesting innovation. You can innovate at it to worship the monster. You can't depart or endeavour again, so effectively that survivor spends their whole time there. Either you'll get +1 understanding on a 1 to 6, or you'll give departing survivors +1 survival, and if you gain that more than once, then they'll get +10. So it is a spot where you can try and get extra understanding onto survivors. Pretty good if you had a bunch of survivors just gain +2 understanding as well. It's really nice to get understanding triggers during the settlement phase. It's a great ability. The other thing to note is this is another innovation in the settlement. So if you have anything that triggers on innovation numbers, limits, watch out for that, because this can get you there a little bit faster. It's just something to pay attention to. Okay, so then afterwards we will get to places, everyone. This is how the showdown starts. I'm not going to go into a massive amount of details in respect to it, but we can see there's Sam, Ash and Rand there, setting everything up ready for the big play that your survivors are going to have to join whether they like it or not. The big things to note now is a lot of the other stuff requires and is triggered by fighting against the Lion Knight, and that's the very first bridge you need to get through, which is that initial level 1 fight. Now, the big things it's going to do is the first time you defeat the Lion Knight, you're going to get the Lion Knight badge gear card. We'll talk about that in a moment. But additionally, whether you win or lose on the aftermath intermission, you're going to get either the white mask or its flip side, the black mask. So you get the white mask if the Lion Knight wins, because the Lion Knight's pleased and happy. You get the black mask if the Lion Knight loses. Additionally, you can begin to be getting decapitated or losing an arm or gaining the hideous disguise rare gear. We'll talk about that as well in a moment. So it's a bunch of different awkward things that you're punished for winning and you're rewarded for losing, which is narratively super interesting, but you want to be aware of that when going to the showdown and maybe be okay with losing survivors. While I'm saying that, important to note, the finale, the third act, that one is a bit different in that if you don't win, it's just going to come back around again and again. So you have to win the finale, and the finale will kill all of the survivors involved. So go all out when it's time for the level 3 fight. Right, let's look at the black mask as that one's face up first. Here it is. So our first ability here is we can visit the retinue to trigger Strange Caravan. I'll talk about that in detail in a little bit. That's present on both sides. For 2 endeavours, you can face the monster. You roll 1d10. On a 1 to 5, you die, and the settlement gets a skull basic resource. On a 6 to 9, you die, and the settlement gets a question mark basic resource. That's the wild resource that covers all different types. And then on a 10 plus, you can get higher. Remember, if you can get bonuses to endeavouring, you gain the legendary Lungs secret fighting art, which is a very good secret fighting art. I talk about it in respect to the Butcher and gaining it there. I'm not going to go into it in detail here, but suffice to say, you don't go to the Black Mask unless you're okay with losing the survivor. Now, interestingly, this provides you a tool to turn survivors into resources. If you've got a survivor that you don't need anymore because they become obsolete or they become badly injured, you can pack them off over here and get a little bit of a refund by either getting an endeavour and a resource, or getting 2 resources if you've chosen Cannibalize. So there is a place here to take advantage of population and exploit it for resources. There's a big old strategy that generates, called making the Golden City or the Great City, and you utilise a bunch of different endeavours and resources and things to generate a very large population, and then you can arbitrarily start turning some of them into resources, which it kind of feeds into itself and can go round and round. It's a fun curio. It's not really something I think is worth doing because the game kind of isn't designed to function if you have like hundreds or even thousands of survivors in a settlement, but it's interesting as a kind of mental exercise, as a thing to see once or to do once, and also just to know resources. Get resources, turn people into resources. The White Mask, on the other hand, you leave the monster an offering, so you have to spend a resource. On a 1 to 6, you feel satisfied and get +2 survival. On a 7 to 9, you stand strongly beside it, and all departing survivors gain +1 strength token. On a 10 plus, you get the Red Fist Secret Fighting Art. So 1 resource for Red Fist is really good, but that is a base 10% chance. 1 resource for extra survival or departing survivors gain a strength token generally isn't worth it so much. But there may be some showdown fights where it is beneficial. Ultimately, I think the Black Mask is the better of the two. Additionally, the Black Mask is what you get for winning. And I do think there's a lot of benefit to winning these things. And my dog has walked in. Hi, Pam. What's up? Yeah? Okay. If you're hearing more jingling, that's just her hanging around. I'm not sure what she's after right now, and I'm not dealing with it. I told her I'm working, but I guess she's a big fan of the Lion Knight. I know you're a big fan of our local lion dog. We've got a huge dog in the area called Villa. He's I forget the actual breed name, but he's affectionately known as like a lion dog. Absolutely massive, and he's as gentle as anything, and he's best friends with Pam. She doesn't get on well with most dogs. But anyway, I need to get back to this. So, that is the innovations. We are now going to take a quick look at the gear. Just 4 items. We'll start with the Lion Knight badge. This is gained the first time you beat the Lion Knight. You get +1 accuracy while you have it. It's unique, it's item, it's jewellery, it's got the Knight tag. And it's missing the badge tag, which I believe is on the other badges. So, a little bit of an oddity there. And at the start of the showdown, you draw a tactics card. I'll look at the 3 tactics cards that come in this right after we look at this gear. But this isn't the best of the badges. I think the other 2 badges are stronger. This is more offensively orientated. However, accuracy, if you've got room, accuracy and a tactics card is nothing to turn your nose up at. So this is a solid little free gift, and it can make a big old difference. Then we have the Hideous Disguise. This is an item, mask, bone, and other. It's an accessory and cursed. It goes on the head and adds 2 armor points. You get +1 strength, and at the start of the showdown, if you're fighting the Lion Knight, you choose your roll card. This is the punishment for beating the Lion Knight, and it is very much a punishment. +1 strength in a slot isn't terrible, so I don't think this is garbage. It's not garbage, but it is a bit frustrating, and it can mess up some builds that need a lot of slots to work. However, it's fine on the more damage-orientated survivors, and it does have some extra little hidden benefits that I will talk about in a short while. Right, then we have the Lion Knight's left claw and the Lion Knight's right claw. These are worth talking about together because they are very unusual in that they are paired but have different names. They're not the only gear we've ever seen in this game with this kind of ability, but they were sort of the first ones, or the ones to be in official release content. There is some stuff that never really got to proper print with the vignette scenarios that were printed in a PDF, and Aya had a pair of a spear and I think a sword or a knife that were paired, but this is a really interesting pair. So you get this if you have a Catar Master in your settlement when you defeat the Lion Knight, the level 3 Lion Knight. One of these, I can't remember which right now, but I am going to talk about green armor in the future. One of these is used for crafting a piece of green armor. So you got to get used to making Catar Masters. You got to get used to beating the Lion Knight as a part of your preparation for becoming good at making green armor. So that's something to note. If you're not playing this in a green armor campaign, then you can use them. They are both weapon melee Catar, And beyond that, these replicas have kind of different functions. So the left claw has 2 speed, 5+ accuracy, and 4 strength, and paired with a Lion Knight's right claw. If you connect the red affinity, it gets deadly. If you connect the blue affinity, it gets +1 speed. The Lion Knight's right claw instead has 2 speed, 8+ accuracy, 8 strength, and the red, if connected, gives on perfect hit +1 survival, and the blue also just has the standard +1 speed. So you're getting these when your campaign is maturing towards sort of the end game, like a little bit before the mid-game Nemesis, but generally not much later than that. So the left claw is kind of badly statted. 4 strength is not what you're looking for on a Catar at this point, but deadly and that blue affinity gives you the option to pivot into a more luck-based build if you wanted to use that. The right claw, on the other hand, has a fantastic stat profile, with only the exception of the accuracy being a bit junky, but you can supplement that by attacking in the blind spot, by having the Lion Knight badge. There's ways to get around that. 8 strength is way more favourable, and it makes it one of the stronger Catars available in the first generation of expansions. So ultimately, I really like these. They're not too expensive to get, and they're unique, and you could even split them up and run them on 2 different survivors separately if you wanted to. So they're nice to have, but the right claw is the one that I prefer. I think the left claw is maybe 1-2 strength points too low, but the right claw can be a great primary attacking weapon, and Catars are a tank orientated weapon because of that specialization, and they let you ignore a reaction on a location when attacking. That's super good for survivors who don't really want to take too many reactions. Nobody really wants to have reactions, but tanks in particular love skipping reactions, and the mastery gets you to the point where you can start stacking and gaining up evasion, which is why Catars I describe as being like a tank orientated weapon class. So that's the 4 items, but we have a little extra thing to talk about with the Hideous Disguise, which is if you manage to deathblow the Lion Knight, then you will unlock a little extra bonus scene, and then it will give you access to the Ageless Apprentice Secret Fighting Art. This is such a fun fighting art. First of all, when you gain hand XP, you may decide not to gain it, so it makes you ageless, much like the ability that you can gain from the White Secrets via max understanding. And also, when you depart, you may rotate up to 3 gear cards in your gear grid. This changes the locations of their affinities and arrows, otherwise the gear functions normally. I really can't ever overstress how interesting and fun this is, and you should be trying to line up the death blow with a mask for sure if you can do it, because it is sweet, it is super interesting, it is so much fun, and I wish this rotating of gear cards was a little bit more common in amongst the various different things you could unlock while playing Kingdom Death, because it just, the possibilities are endless. I can't even start to talk about them, but they change so many gear grids and make things that previously maybe weren't working suddenly work. The negative is, of course, that you still have the Hideous Disguise, so that's junking up one piece of your gear grid. There are ways of getting rid of items like that, but they, like gaining Crystalline Skin, lets you ignore Cursed. But even with that mask as part of your gear grid, this is super, super interesting. Courtly Screenwriter is gained after you defeat the level 3 Lion Knight and gain through the finale. At the start of the showdown, you write down on a scrap of paper which survivors will survive the showdown, and who will deal the killing blow, and during the aftermath, if your predictions were correct, you raise the settlement survival limit by 1. Increasing your survival limit is super powerful. It's just really, really good. And this is fun as well. You can absolutely engineer this to ensure that the right survivor gets the killing blow, although you're supposed to write it secretly so the other members of the group don't know. So probably if you're playing with other people, you shouldn't say what you wrote on there, but it doesn't really matter. You play how you want to play as long as you're having fun, and I think this is super fun. It just comes kind of late in the campaign. Okay, next we have our tactics to look at. There are 3 of them as per the other Knight expansions, so there's 3 left to look at there with the Dung Beetle Knight. We have confounding formation first. If you stand in a line at the beginning of the monster's turn in this formation, you can choose anyone survived to gain the priority target token. This is one of my favourite pieces of art in all of Kingdom Death. I love it so much. I would love to have a big picture of it so I could frame it, because it just makes me so happy. And also it's a very powerful ability. Focusing the monster on the same survivor over and over is a great way of controlling the game. And while some monsters will punish survivors for being in a line in front, you can often get around that. And just, if you have, say, spears here and here, or ranged survivors, on the outside too, they can still attack in and you can just hold there. It's controlling the monster's AI in a significant and important fashion, and there's plenty of other things that could take advantage of the priority target token continuously being dropped onto you. So that is fantastic. This is a really good tactic to draw for your tactics. Then we have reviving tactics. So if you stand the survivors in a cross with a gap in the middle, like so, then at the beginning of your act, so the act, I guess, of the badge wielder, it's never been entirely clear, you may end the survivor's turn, so that's all the survivors are done, and you heal all light and heavy injuries, restore all armor points, remove all bleeding tokens, and gain survival up to the settlement survival limit. You can only do this once per showdown. That's super powerful. That is super, super powerful. The skill element involved in this is playing chicken for as long as you can to avoid popping this, and you want to do it at the exact moment where it's really important to do it to avoid severe injuries, because this doesn't remove them, or death from, say, bleeding tokens. It's an amazing tool to have available for your usage. And I'm always happy to draw this. Even if you don't squeeze the maximum value out of it, it can normally tip us a showdown from being like anyone's game to firmly landing in the hands of these survivors. Finally, we have trip formation. So if you're standing in front of the monster and there are 2 survivors behind the monster, then you can spend your activation to trip the monster. It gets knockback 1 and is knocked down. This one's not so great because the knockback 1 causes the monster to collide with both the survivors behind, so they themselves will suffer collision. But there are definitely ways of getting around that, and if the monster's knocked down, especially if it's not level 3, that is a big old round of potential attacks landed in on the monster, and that can be super, super useful and just close out a showdown. Knocking the monster down is very powerful. Even against level 3s who have Indomitable, it's still strong, as it will give somebody an attack that doesn't have to worry about reactions and is very accurate. So not as good as the other 2, but when you're in the same selection as Confounding Formation and Reviving Tactics, good luck, because there isn't much better than these 2. They are really strong. Finally, on this part, we're going to take a quick look at the fighting arts, because there are ways of gaining these directly through the other bits and pieces. So we have, first of all, Headliner. When you become doomed or gain the priority target token, you may choose to gain +1 survival or +1 strength token. So this is a multi-use fighting art. If you're playing as the tank and you're trying to hold the priority target token, say with confounding tactics, that can be a great way of generating more survival for your defensive actions. If you're an aggressive attacking type survivor, then you get a little refund if you hit the two doomed or by chance you gain priority target token. This is in no way a top tier fighting art, but it is solidly fine and it can be quite useful. I especially like it on a spear user because they tend to be able to attack into the trap more often, and this is a little bit of compensation if they become doomed because the trap does go off. Next we have Tenacious. When your wound attempt on a hit location is a failure, you may put that hit location back on top of the deck instead of the discard pile. I live it once per round. I don't think I need to go into too much detail how strong it is to get a second chance at a hit location that may provide a vital resource or severely cripple the monster with a permanent injury of some kind. And also, it's an attack that somebody can do and they know that they know exactly what they're going to be attacking into. They know that that card is not the trap. They know fully what... perfect information. And information is amazing. Finally, we have Wardrobe Expert. This is whenever you suffer a severe injury at a hit location, you may archive the gear worn at that location to ignore it and gain +1 survival. This one is situational to bad. Archiving gear is almost never a good call, and also most gear that's worn at a specific location tends to be part of a set. So you're breaking up your set, you're breaking up your affinities, you're spending those resources, you're losing that. Like, it's generally a loss. The only times this comes into play and matters is when it's the final survivor in a showdown, or you're in a showdown where death means game over. So I don't rate Wardrobe Expert very highly at all, especially as the reward is very low, and I'm not interested in getting this, and I will typically replace it if I do draw it. So that's all of that, and it's time for us now to take a look at the triggered Endeavour ability on the white and black mask, which is the Strange Caravan. So we'll just turn the page to here and get ready for a really cool little bit of world building and some super interesting and unique things. Okay, so here we are, Strange Caravan. The camped outside the Lion Knight's view, the retinue unpack a caravan of trash and treasures. The trick is figuring out which is which. Each one beckons passing survivors to inspect their wares. Choose one member of the retinue to approach and nominate a survivor. So I'm going to look at them from right to left. The reason for that is the highest amount of talking I have to do will be about the Stoic Seamstress. So we will begin with the Impish Archivist. Let's try and just get ourselves zoomed in over here. There we are. So this is the member of the retinue with the book, and you get to choose one of these to trigger, and you will pay a price to gain a benefit. First one is archive 1 Whistling Mace gear and gain +1 permanent strength. This is worth doing once your Whistling Maces are not worth very much anymore. Whistling Maces have the problem of bad strength with a good ability, so if you're not planning to use them with Lantern Armor in the late game, and you've used one against the hand, because the hand does get quite well managed by the Whistling Mace, then here's an opportunity to trade it in for an Endeavour, and you get +1 strength. It's okay. Suffer the Blind, severe injury and gain the Tenacious fighting art is the second one. We just talked about Tenacious. Blind is -1 accuracy though, because of the lost eye. Given that Tenacious is best on an aggressive survivor, losing accuracy isn't great. But again, this is a severe injury, so if you have ways of cancelling a severe injury, say archiving Dried Acanthus, you can kind of game the system a little bit there just to get Tenacious in exchange for a piece of Dried Acanthus, which might be something you want to do. Then we have archive 3 gear cards, all crafted from different settlement locations to gain the Headliner fighting art. So the trick would be to archive a piece of gear crafted from the Skinnery, the Bonesmith, and the Organ Grinder, because that will be the cheapest at 1 hide, 1 organ, and 1 bone. Or you could archive stuff you're just never going to use ever again. However, I don't think Headliner is worth 3 gear cards. I think there's better stuff you can do with gear cards just within the strange caravan itself. So I think this is a bit of a trap, and there's only very specific builds I would want to get this this kingly gentleman unlocked, so to speak. I wish this was actually the artwork for the headliner. It's so great. Finally, we got ignore the hamstrings, remove the hamstring severe injury, and gain the following impairment. Thin-skinned, you cannot gain insanity for any reason. So this is hamstrung is a kind of a really problematic severe injury. It disables all fighting arts and abilities, so that can just break a build. You may be willing to trade not gaining your sanity for that kind of benefit. It's worth noting that within the Gambler's Chest, there is a type of Ark Survivor who can't gain insanity anyway, so that is perfectly useful, and there's no real downside to becoming thin-skinned. Ultimately, Impish Archivist's good because you choose what you're doing, so you know the benefits, and that gives you a very clear information on what you're deciding to do. And I think they're fine, but they're not things you're going to use very often, because most of them are quite expensive prices to pay. Our second one we can visit is the Silent Barterer. She has chests full of bric-a-brac, and you will offer a weapon or an armor gear for trade. You archive it and you roll a dice. On a 1, you get nothing except -1 permanent luck, unless the gear you traded has an other keyword. Ideally, do this trade with someone who has otherworldly luck from the Flower Knight expansion, so you don't have to deal with this. Typically, trading in other keyworded things is not great, because you really want to be throwing in the cheapest gear possible, so probably spare bone swords and bone daggers and bone darts, stuff like that. That's the best things to trade in, or rawhide armor pieces if you want the armor side of stuff. On a 2 to 5, you gain a random vermin resource, and if the gear you traded in has the set keyword, i.e. it's an armor piece, you'll gain the Wardrobe Expert Fighting Art. We just talked about Wardrobe Fighting, Wardrobe Expert. It's kind of bad, so this is a not great result. But some vermin can be beneficial, so at least you've gained something out of it, and you kind of converted 2 resources, the Endeavour plus the resource spent to craft the gear, into a vermin resource. That might give you something good, but it is a kind of a loss. On 6 to 9, you get something that you don't know what it's about, and you get 2 basic resources. You smash it up. If you traded in a monster resource based piece of gear, then you'll get a random resource from that monster plus a basic resource. So this is, again, if you've thrown in a piece of gear that only costs 1 resource to craft, you're spending 2 resources and you're getting 2 resources back. I really like this. This is a solid result, because you should be throwing away things you don't care about, and it's one of the few ways you have to recycle gear. So if you're smart about it, you can get good stuff back. Finally, on a 10 plus, if you've traded in a weapon, you gain the Man Mask gear, and if you've traded in armor, you gain the God Mask gear. Man Mask is okay. It's fairly decent as masks go. The God Mask is hard to activate and super powerful. So this is why typically trading armor in here is better than weapons, because the Man Mask is nice to get, but you really want the God Mask out of these, so that's the one you would aim for first, and then later on you might trade in weapons to get the Man Mask gear if that's interesting you. Overall though, I don't think the Silent Barterer is super great to deal with. It is at best kind of like resource neutral, Endeavour plus gear that costs a resource, giving you 2 resources back, only occasionally giving you the masks. So I think unless you got a lot of spare Endeavours, you can most of the time not worry about this one at all. Finally, we have the Stoic Seamstress. So you nominate a survivor with 3+ understanding and offer a payment, and they become the retinue's mannequin. And they have a example version of an armour set constructed around them. So the first one costs a white line for a shank bone and a love juice and gives you dancer armour. Gives you the dancer armour set bonus hybrid card. The second one, Brawler armour, costs a lion testes, a beast steak and a scrap. And also your survivor gains the leader fighting art, a dancer one again +1 courage. And last of all, the Warlord armour set card is gained by paying a Phoenix Fingers, a Curious Hand and a question mark. And the survivor you chose gets a permanent +1 strength. So in all cases, you're getting something decent plus an armor set card. These are great deals, and they're going to bring us to the last chunk of this, and what I think is the best part of the Line expansion, and that is the concept of hybrid armor sets. So hybrid armor sets are armor sets constructed out of multiple different pieces of gear from other armor sets, and when you have the specific lineup of them, they will unlock a special armor set bonus, a hybrid armor set bonus, that first of all has the ability that it gives you a different amount of armor points to all hit locations, and secondly it has its own set bonuses. So we are now going to look at all three of these one at a time and discuss. We start off with dancer armor. This requires a phoenix helm, screaming braces, a rawhide vest, a leather skirt and leather boots. So it lets you recycle the rawhide vest from one of your older armor sets, and also needs phoenix and screaming antelope to be able to craft stuff, as indicated by the initial payment costs as well. So the set bonus is while you're wearing this, you may use the tumble fighting art, which is whenever you would suffer a collision, you can roll the dice, and on a 6+, you tumble out the way and place your survivor in the closest free space outside of the collision path. Tumble is a nice little utility fighting art. It's not amazing, but it's also not bad. It's great to get it as part of a set bonus. The second thing you get in the set bonus is at the end of the first attack during your act, you gain a knight and may spend it immediately. We're going to circle back to that. I just want to talk about the specific pieces of gear, and then we'll talk about dancer armor and its utility as a whole. So we have the Phoenix Helm. If you're insane at the start of the showdown and you have the blue puzzle connected plus a red and a green, then you'll gain an invasion token. You can see here, the armor set at its base gives you everything you need for that. The rawhide vest, when it's puzzle blue and red are connected, gives you +1 evasion as well. Then you have a leather skirt, no special abilities on that, and you have screaming braces that gives you +2 to your roll result when activating terrain. So one of the things dancer armor can do is go sort out the terrain to get more benefits. Finally, the footwear is leather boots. If you connect the green left and right puzzle affinities, then at the end of the act you may move 1 space. Additionally, it's worth noting, leather boots are great when put together with monster grease, which could go into slot 9 over here where I'm circling. You get another green here into slot 7, and suddenly monster grease is +2 evasion. So we've got 4 evasion potential baked into this build, 2 of it naturally as part of the armor set. So evasion is a big part of what dancer armor can provide, which makes sense. This is dancer armor. So there are 3 main ways you're going to use dancer armor. The first is to play a survivor who will move in, attack the monster, and then use their extra knight to either deliver a second attack, moving away, or something along those lines. So the main use there is to move forward, hit the monster, and then move backwards, and you keep yourself safely away from the monster. You're not close, so you should normally not be the main target. That's a nice little use for it. The second way, a little bit more complicated. You definitely need the monster grease and you need active, and that's playing a dancing tank. The goal here is to attack the monster and then move backwards and still be the closest target or the guaranteed target, but be just far enough away so when the monster picks you and moves towards you, you can dash and get out of reach and negate the monster's entire action. This works really well with reach weapons, so spears, lantern glaives, stuff like that. They fit together really well into the entire affair. It is survival intensive, but it is kind of fun and pretty good to be able to blank monsters from being able to attack. Even if you can't do it all the time, you do have a fair bit of evasion, so you can take occasional hits. Even if you're not planning to do this as your primary goal for Dancer Armour, it's worth remembering that if somebody else is in trouble, you can step in and start doing this to give them space, give them time, give them what they need to recover. So it's a super interesting, useful thing. The last is to effectively become a piece of artillery. One of the things that's quite rare in Kingdom Death are good ranged armour sets. Rawhide is the default best one. We have a range specific one that is in the Gambler's Chest seed patterns, and then Dancer Armour is fantastic for it as well, because what it does is if you've spent your night and your activation to use a bow, which is normal because they're cumbersome, you then get to move afterwards. So this can let you shoot and scoot like a piece of artillery, hence me calling it artillery build. With adding a dash into the entire thing as well, you can go scoot, shoot, scoot, or you can scoot and move towards terrain to be able to activate it using the Screaming Braces. This is just 3 ways you can use Dancing Armour. There's more, there's plenty more, because in Kingdom Death, the more mobility you have, the more options you have. Movement is an amazing, amazing stat, and this is giving you extra movement to use continuously, and a little bit more if you have leather boots as well. So phenomenal armor set, really good, one of my picks for top armor sets. Then we have Brawler armor. So this is a skull helm, a white lion gauntlet, the lion skin cloak, the phoenix falls, and the phoenix greaves. It gives 4 armor points to all locations, and its abilities are: your skull helm cannot be destroyed, you get +2 accuracy when attacking with fist and tooth, and when you're knocked down, you gain +1 strength token, and you probably say the line from Chumbawamba's Tub Thumping. When it comes to the individual pieces of gear, Phoenix Falls gives you +1 insanity departing, which is nice. Phoenix Greaves gives you +2 movement if you're insane, which is really good. This is blanked. This doesn't do anything because you can't pounce as it stands with this armor set, and the lion skin cloak reduces damage from every hit suffered by 1 to a minimum of 1. So the really big thing that Brawler armor does is it gives you a armor point viable way to use the lion skin cloak, as well as giving you a fist and tooth orientated armor set if that is what you're so interested in. And if you have self knockdown abilities, you can even leverage the strength token gaining as well to go further and further. On top of all of that, the lion skin cloak has the fur keyword, meaning it will work with the Lion Slayer cape, I hope I've remembered that correctly, from the White Giga Lion, so you can stack it even further. Damage negation is really strong, and getting it here is absolutely phenomenal, along with this being a really, really badass and cool looking armor set on top of everything else. So I really like Brawler armor. I will say the affinities and the fact that this piece and this piece are not doing anything particularly at all does hold this back compared to the other two. It's kind of the problem because it's using White Lion Gauntlet, Phoenix Folds and Phoenix Greaves, all of which are probably in the weaker selection of pieces of armor from that particular, the armor sets that they come from. And it's heavy as well, just heavy because of the White Lion Gauntlet and the Lion Skin Cloak, which is something to be aware of. Ultimately, I like this more than I should. I tend to use it for tanking, because it can just take hits, but it is definitely as it said, Brawler armor. It evokes all of that, and I do like it a lot. Our third piece of armor, here we go, is my favourite, the best of the bunch in my opinion, and that is Warlord armor. There we go, let's get it centered and straight. Okay, so Warlord armor requires a Screaming Horns, a leather braces, the Phoenix Placard, the Lantern Mail, and the Lantern Greaves. This is kind of one layout you can put it in. This one is a little bit more flexible in that you could run the Lantern Greaves beneath the Screaming Horns and put some reds into connect and give that +2 movement. But this is the default and the one I'd recommend going for. The set bonus is 5 armor points to all hit locations, making this pretty decent for the mid to late game. You get +1 speed and +1 attack when +1 speed and +1 luck when attacking with axes. When you critically wound, all other non-death survivors gain +1 survival and +2 strength until the end of the round. So this is an axe-focused armor set that wants to be running luck and is seeking to go first in the round, to swing out with an axe, to score a critical wound, and to benefit everyone else who then gets that extra survival and those strength bonuses, which is super thematic for something called Warlord armor. On top of that, it has a nice support ability in Scream to give extra movement and insanity to non-death survivors, non-death insanity survivors, and also gives you extra survival in departing. It has the potential to unlock for more movement if you want it, but significantly has probably one of the best body pieces in the game with the Phoenix Placard, that if you're insane, you ignore the first hit each round and suffer 1 brain damage instead, as long as you have its green, blue and red puzzle affinities connected, which as you can see we can do right here just with the pieces of gear in the armor set. This one is just fantastic. This is amazing for spear builds, because you can run the Lantern Glaive, which is a spear axe. It's amazing for axe masters because they will score automatic critical wounds with their mastery ability against persistent injuries. It's just really fun, and I love having a armor like focused around given weapons. It's nice to see that and be rewarded for going in this particular direction. So Warlord armor is, I think, my personal favourite, although Dancer armor overall is stronger due to its increased flexibility because it's not as focused and it is running about with movement. Movement is incredibly strong. I don't have any particular specific builds because these are obviously built from like a bunch of different locations, so there's so many different options you can go with, and as mentioned, essentially you can go bows or damage dealing weapons here. You probably want shields, maybe some other stuff that may help Fist and Tooth be stronger if you're going to use Fist and Tooth, or you could just run shields and a tank weapon. Over here definitely get some axes. That is just 100% what it wants to be doing. And that is everything I'm going to be talking about for the Strange Caravan here in this particular video. Provide a little bit of a summary at the end here. It has some interesting innovations, some really good pieces of gear. I think the tactics cards are all great. 2 of them are absolutely amazing. I love the secret fighting arts. Both of them are interesting and fun. The fighting arts I think are fine. Varying in degrees, or it depends how well you can leverage them. And when it comes to these additional Strange Caravan stuffs, you should be aiming to unlock and make these hybrid armor sets more than the others. These I discussed where I think they might be worth using. And in regards to the armor sets, all 3 of them are great, but I think Dancer armor is overall the best one, Warlord armor second best, and Brawler armor is bringing up the rear, mostly because it's kind of it's lacking in affinities, and it's sort of a bit of a mixed bag in that it is trying to be a Fist and Tooth fighter, but it's sort of also leaning heavily into being this kind of durable tank type thing. And Fist and Tooth tank is interesting and can happen, so it's not beyond the realms of possibility. This gets better if you have a specific weapon that does Fist and Tooth, like, say, the Immortal Arm from the Indomitable Crimson Crocodile, which, now that works with the Skull Helm and this Phoenix Greaves and is a fun as heck build. So, you might want to consider trying out the Crimson Crocodile in combination with these as well. just to experience that for once, because that's a fun doozy. I just can't demonstrate it here because we don't have the cards in yet. Well, all's left to say is when you're out there in the darkness and maybe you hear the sounds of laughter and theatre, perhaps it's time to get dressed up, get on the stage, and happy hunting.